Have you ever felt that, well, that challenge,
Yeah.
shifting from being on your own, maybe working solo for ages, and then suddenly you're back in a team environment?
Oh, absolutely. Or maybe spending time in quiet reflection and then re-entering a really demanding social scene.
Exactly. There's often this little bit of friction, isn't there, when your own habits kind of bump up against what the group expects.
Yeah. Those ingrained ways of doing things.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating ancient text from the Buddhist tradition. It's called the Golissānisuttaṃ.
Right. And it's essentially a dialogue happening within the monastic community back then. It gives a surprisingly detailed guide.
A guide for what specifically?
For a forest-dwelling monk,
Mm-hmm.
someone used to, deep solitude about how they should act, how they should integrate when they come back into the communal monastery.
Okay, interesting. So our mission today is to unpack these guidelines. They sound specific, but maybe surprisingly practical.
Oh, very practical. We want to see what this ancient text, this monastic discipline guide, can teach us today about fitting into new groups, becoming more self-aware, and just contributing positively, really.
Yeah, wherever we find ourselves. You might be surprised how relevant this stuff still feels.
Definitely.
So let's set the scene a bit. Where and when is this happening?
Okay, so the context is the Buddha residing in Rajaha, specifically at a place called Vedavana Kalinda Kanivappa,
Which translates to?
the bamboo grove, squirrel sanctuary. Sounds quite peaceful, doesn't it?
It does. And into this setting comes this figure, Golissāni,
That's him. Golissāni. He's an Aranyako bhikkhu.
meaning a forest monk,
Hmm.
deeply used to being alone, presumably.
Exactly. Deep solitude, contemplation out in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
And the text says he's come to the community for a specific reason, a karadina, so some necessary business.
Okay. And then Sariputta steps in.
Yes, Yasma Sariputta, one of the Buddha's chief disciples. He sees Golissāni arrive, and he uses it as a teaching moment, addressing the other monks.
Sort of like, okay, everyone, let's talk about this situation.
Pretty much. He's laying out the appropriate conduct for these forest monks when they're back in the mix, back in the community. It's like a primer on social reintegration for contemplatives.
What's really striking, you mentioned, is the tension here.
Right. The text explicitly talks about the potential conflict between the monks' free-spirited life in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
The Pali is serviharena, and the needs of community living.
So that freedom could lead to habits that just don't work well with others.
Precisely. And the sutta is clever because it doesn't just list rules. It keeps showing the consequences if they fail to adapt.
What kind of consequences?
Well, what people might say. The criticisms, the negative perceptions that arise. Like, look at this guy, supposedly so spiritual from his time alone, but he can't even manage basic courtesy here. It gives a real human motivation to follow the guidelines.
Okay, so let's dig into those guidelines. What's the first thing Sariputta brings up?
The absolute foundation, respect and deference. He says a forest-dwelling monk must be respectful and deferential to fellow monastics.
That seems fundamental. Is there a specific term for that?
Yeah, the Pali is sabarmakarusu, sagaradhavena sapatisana. It really conveys a deep sense of reverence and consideration for others in the shared life.
And the consequence if they're not respectful.
The criticism is direct. People will ask, what good is this venerable one's free-spirited life in the forest if they come back here and they're disrespectful?
That hits hard. And it's not just ancient monks, is it?
Not at all. Think about any group setting today. A team meeting, family gathering.
Right. How quickly does someone just, checking their phone while you're talking or cutting you off mid-sentence, how quickly does that damage the vibe?
Instantly. It erodes trust. The sutta frames these not as minor slips, but as like fundamental cracks in the community's foundation. People notice.
And it seems the text gets even more specific, almost granular. You mentioned seating etiquette.
Oh yeah, it's really practical. The monk should be asanakusalina, skilled in seating.
Skilled in seating? What does that even mean?
It means things like not barging in and pushing out elder monks to get a seat, or, conversely, not taking up so much space that you block newer monks from finding a spot.
Okay, that is specific. But, in today's world, does that kind of micro etiquette really matter that much? Isn't getting the job done more important sometimes?
That's the modern tension, isn't it? Efficiency versus social grace. But the sutta suggests these minor acts are actually huge signals.
Signals of what?
Of awareness, of respect,
Right.
of whether you actually understand you're part of a collective now. Failing at seating isn't just awkward. The text implies it shows you don't even grasp basic community conduct, abhisamakari kampi domana janatiti.
So Golissāni, fresh from the forest, just plonking himself down without looking around, that sends a message.
A loud one. It says, I'm not really present to the needs of this group I've just rejoined. It signals a lack of consideration.
The Sutta also talks about public decorum, right? Timings and things.
Yes, absolutely. It advises not entering the village for alms rounds too late and not returning during the day, meaning wandering around when the alms round is finished.
So stick to the schedule, basically. Don't look like you're just aimlessly wandering.
Exactly. It's about adhering to the community's rhythm and, importantly, avoiding the perception of idleness or erratic behavior. And there's another related point.
Just
Not being overly familiar with families before or after meals. Maintaining a certain professional distance, you could say, even with lay supporters.
Okay, stepping back, what's the bigger principle here?
It seems to be about discipline, reputation, and managing your public presence. If the monk seems lax, undisciplined, overly familiar, people observe.
And they might blame it on his time alone, like, that forest life made him weird.
Potentially, yes. Or just see it as a lack of integration. It undermines credibility. It's about building and maintaining trust through consistent, appropriate conduct. Even how you manage your time matters.
And this focus extends right into personal bearing, how you carry yourself and communicate.
Deeply. The text is quite explicit. A monk should be anutataina.
Not arrogant.
That's right. And akapalena.
Not restless or fickle. Steady.
Yes. And in conversation. Amukarena.
Not talkative.
And avikichamaxia.
Not with scattered speech. Focused.
Exactly. Plus, being suvashana obedient or easy to speak to, teachable, and kalyamaitna having good friends or associates.
Wow, that's quite a list. It sounds like a blueprint for just being a decent, effective person in any group.
It really does. Each quality directly impacts perception and effectiveness. Think about it, an arrogant team member, someone who flits from topic to topic. It's disruptive.
Totally. So the text is saying your inner state, your composure, your focus is crucial for community harmony.
And for your own credibility within it.
Yeah.
If you lack these, it's not just a personal issue. It affects how you're received and whether you're seen as a positive influence. Again, the consequence is criticism.
Okay, so focus and wisdom built on that mindful foundation. And if these internal practices are weak,
Same pattern. The community will notice the lack through your external behavior, and there will be criticism. It's a holistic picture your inner state inevitably shows. You can't really fake it in a close community.
it really underscores how inner work translates outward. But the sutta doesn't stop at self-control and basic mindfulness, does it? It pushes towards deeper knowledge.
No, it definitely raises the bar. It stresses being diligent in higher doctrine, abhidhamma, and discipline, vinaya.
Abhidhamma being the detailed psychological philosophy, and Vinaya the monastic rules.
Exactly. And the point isn't just to practice these things, but to understand them
Yeah.
deeply. Because the text says if you're asked a question about abhidhamma or vinaya, then you can't answer.
Criticism follows. People will think, what's the point of his practice if he doesn't even understand the theory?
Right. It implies a lack of intellectual rigor alongside the practice. And it goes even further.
How so?
It demands diligence in peaceful liberations transcending form, the arupas.
Arupas. Can you unpack that a bit? Sounds abstract.
They are quite advanced states. Think of them as profound, formless meditative achievements, deep states of concentration that go beyond any sense of material form. It's about exploring consciousness itself.
Wow, okay. And the expectation here is,
Not just to experience these states, hopefully, but to understand the path to them, their nature, and again, be able to articulate something about them if asked.
so experiential depth coupled with intellectual clarity,
Precisely. And then there's the final level mentioned.
which sounds even more demanding, superhuman states.
Yes. Uttarimanussatam.
Ah,
Diligence is required here, too. And the criticism for not being able to answer questions about this is the sharpest.
what do they say?
People will basically say, you don't even know the purpose for which you went forth. You don't understand the ultimate goal of the whole spiritual path.
So superhuman states refers to enlightenment, liberation, the big prize.
Essentially, yes. The ultimate spiritual attainment, the very reason for undertaking the monastic life in the first place. It suggests that true mastery involves not just personal practice or even deep meditative states, but a profound understanding of the final goal and the path, an understanding you can somehow share or embody.
That's fascinating. It's not just about quiet contemplation. It's about rigorous learning, deep experience, and being able to communicate it. How does that connect outside the monastery?
Well, think about any field. True mastery isn't just doing the job, is it? It's understanding the principles, the why behind the what, and being able to explain it, to mentor others, to innovate. It's continuous learning and the ability to articulate your understanding.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about depth, not just surface-level practice. Okay, this leads to a really pivotal moment in the sutta, right? A clarifying question comes up.
Yes, exactly. Another prominent disciple, Yasma Moggallana, steps in and asks Sariputta a really crucial question.
What does he ask?
He asks, essentially, okay, all these qualities you've listed, these Dhamma, do they apply only to these forest-dwelling monks coming back to the community, or do they also apply to the monks who live in the village or town full-time?
Ah, the ones who are already embedded in the community setting. Good question. What's Sariputta's answer?
It's profound and really broadens the scope. He replies that yes, they absolutely apply to the forest monks, but Pajeva,
Pajeva, meaning?
even more so. They apply even more to the village-dwelling monks.
Wow. Okay, that's the real kicker, isn't it?
It really is. It transforms the whole teaching. These aren't just niche instructions for a specific type of person adjusting after solitude.
They're fundamental principles for anyone living in any kind of community.
Exactly. And the implication is powerful. The closer you live to other people, the more interaction you have.
The more important all these disciplines become. Respect, awareness, self-control, communication, inner work.
Precisely. It's a universal validation for the need for self-awareness, discipline, and social responsibility in any shared human environment. Living closely with others demands more mastery of these things, not less, compared to living alone.
That's a fantastic insight. So wrapping this up, we've journeyed through these ancient guidelines, starting with a monk used to the forest finding his way back into the group.
And we found they cover this huge range from, basic table manners, almost like seating.
Right, all the way up to self-control, mindful communication, and even deep spiritual and intellectual understanding.
The surprising thing isn't just the rules themselves, maybe, but how relevant, how practical they still feel centuries later.
Absolutely. So whether you listening are maybe navigating a new job or joining a volunteer group or even just trying to make relationships at home more harmonious.
This Golissānisuttaṃ, this ancient text, seems to offer a really timeless framework. It's about how to show up as your best self, really, within whatever community you're part of.
Yeah. It's a strong reminder that our own personal discipline, our inner state, has a direct, deep impact on the collective experience, on everyone around us.
It connects the personal journey directly to the social fabric.
So maybe a final thought to leave with everyone. If adapting that wild, independent part of ourselves, our own forest life, to fit into a community requires this kind of detailed, comprehensive discipline.
What subtle habits, maybe from your own forest, your ingrained solo ways of being, might be holding you back just a little from really flourishing in the communities you're part of now?
Something to think about.